Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
This is the part where like we talk naturally, like we have a rapport,
right?
know?
Yeah.
Like this is the we're like pals, you know? Can I call you Tom?
Sure.
Oh, that's sweet of you to say. Hi, everybody. Hello. My name is David Bell.
Oh, and I'm Hana Michels. Hi.
Hi.
I'm very tired.
And we just watched I Saw the TV Glow. It's about violence on television, the horrors of it, and nothing else.
Yeah, and how it makes children do sex to each other.
Yes, that's important. Yes.
I know this might sound crazy. I don't want to alarm you.
Do you remember a TV show we used to watch together? It was called
The Big O Big?
Yeah. Do you watch?
Hana, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah? How's
Life
the other
is
room?
not.
How's the other room right now?
Oh, it's pretty good. Someone's eating their dry food. I can't
Is it
tell
you?
who it is. Yeah, it's me.
For people for reference, we happen to be in the same place, and this is like end of day weekday. I'm so happy you're here, Hana.
Oh, it
for
was
people who
Rue.
are wondering, it was Rue.
Yeah.
Of course, it was Rue.
Yeah, that seems obvious to me now.
Yeah, he's a little snarfer.
He is a little snarfer. Sorry,
so
he just
Tom-
tried
Tom-
to balance on something.
Tom would be here. He would
Yeah.
love to be here. He's not sick or dead.
Yeah.
This movie isn't playing where he is. So I asked him permission to cover this movie because this movie, we were originally going to cover it last weekend for The Fall Guy, and I'm glad I saw The Fall Guy, but I really wanted to give this movie support because I had seen this director. We had both seen director's first film, We're All Going to the World's Fair. We watched that together, and so it's actually really nice that we're covering this.
Yeah.
I am going to butcher the director's name. Jane Schoenbraun?
It might be Schoenbrunn?
Schoenbraun?
I don't know. It's one of those things that we said, or it isn't.
Yeah, I could have looked this up, and I normally do. This was one occasion where I purposefully was like, you know what, fuck it. I'll just embarrass myself. But they directed this film called We're All Going to the World's Fair. That is, you can watch it right now. We covered it on Hypecast, I believe, for movies that deserve more hype. It's a found footage film about a young girl in, I want to say, like middle America who is dealing with, like kind of the thing a lot of kids are dealing with right now, which is like there's no physical space for her to exist in the world. Everything's closed down, everything, I forget where this was in relation to the pandemic, not that it matters. And it was sort of about like the loneliness of this teenage girl as it pertained to internet culture. Would you agree with that, since you also saw it?
And it kind of takes place a little while ago. It's kind of that creepypasta Skype still existed era. But
yeah.
It could have taken place today had they not used the same motif.
Yeah, it's kind of a Slender Man thing, and it's I think the meme is people saying we're all going to the World's Fair, if I recall.
Yeah.
And which I believe is a made up thing. It's a really good found footage horror drama.
Yeah.
And this director, they're known for horror dramas so far. They've made 2. and We're All Going to the World's Fair is not as horror as I think people would expect, but it is a very good movie. And this is all leading up to this movie.
Yeah, it's not
Hana,
horror, but it is chilling.
Yeah, and so I would argue it is a horror for that reason. It's just not conventional, right?
Yeah, it's more psychological.
Yeah, Hana, how did you like I Saw the Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Hana, you should plug some stuff at the start of this. Where can we find you? What are you up to? You are a guest co-host, after all.
You can find me on social media at HANAMICHELS everywhere. Don't ask me. I didn't spell it like that. I didn't choose this. Yeah. And that's what you can do.
All right. Nothing else?
I feel like there's a lot of stuff I'm working on that's not going to have that doesn't have like a concrete release date or anything. So I feel
that's for
hesitant.
later plugs.
Yeah.
That's fair. So, okay. How did you like I Saw the TV Glow?
I honestly loved it. It shook me in a way I didn't think movies could still do. It's nice to know that you still have feelings. It was emotionally resonant in a lot of different ways that I think a lot of different people would relate to and relate to differently than I did, because it's so complex. It's the type of film where every single frame there's something new to notice. If we were to watch this again, I think we would notice entirely different things.
I agree. Yeah, I also really liked this movie. This director is 2 for 2 with me. When you say feeling emotions, do you mean specifically about movies? Because I'll get that every now and then, where I'll get very numb to movies, especially because of my job, and then a movie comes along that makes me go like, oh man, movies can still make me feel things.
With regards to pop culture in general, but also in general, I don't know. No, I still have emotions.
I mean, it's a cynical time right now. You know, I still get what you're going after here.
Yeah,
like,
we try to close off as much as possible sometimes in order to live when we are living.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to feel vulnerable right now, and to put, like, especially I think with fandom and stuff too, like the internet, it's easier to be way more closed off to a lot of things happening for sure. And it's and it's hard to you want to, I guess, feel like you're putting everything in its place. I don't know what I'm saying. No, that's fair.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm kind of in the same place with this movie. So, like, I want to start with the fact that this movie is listed as a horror.
Yeah.
It's getting great reviews, and I think it's getting pretty good audience reviews, too. It's also just, it's filled with people that I'm rooting for. Justice Smith he has had a career right now of, I don't know, you probably haven't seen anything he's in. That's the main character, Owen.
Yeah.
He was in the Jurassic World movies as like the funny tech guy.
That's right.
He has a lot of that right now. What's that?
Oh my! I did not recognize him as the same person because he's so raw in this film, and yet so raw and in self-denial at the same time. It's a very strange tightrope that he walks and carries through every single scene.
He's so good in this.
He's so good.
I wanted to point that out because it's nothing against these other movies. He was also in Detective Pikachu. He was in Dungeons and Dragons, a movie I really liked. But in every single case, in every single case, he's kind of like, oh, I'm the funny guy, you know, like, I haven't seen.
I literally didn't recognize him from those other films because holy shit.
Yeah. He was in a recent movie, The American Society of Magical Negroes, which I have not seen yet. I imagine that's more in line with like doing a more serious role. This also has what's her name, Bridget Lundy Payne as the other
I think it
character,
might be
Maddie.
their name, but yeah.
Oh, they are them. Yes, I do believe. And they were one of Bill and Ted's kids in Bill and Ted Face the Music. So like they were really good in that as well. And so it's two actors that I'm like, oh, I like both of these people. I like this director. It has fucking what's his name, Connor O'Malley from I Think You Should Leave as well, and then a little sprinkle of Fred Durst just for good measure.
I do want to talk about what good stunt casting that was, just because of who he was in the era where this takes place.
Yeah, Fred Durst plays, I believe, I'm almost certain it was him because I couldn't think of anybody else it would be, the father figure who's very like subtly terrifying at first, more terrifying later, I would say. And I didn't recognize him because he looks old. They made him look real old.
Well,
I guess because he is old.
he is old, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the horror aspect, because I would say that like this isn't a horror movie in the sense that it has like, jump scares.
No.
It is mostly at times a drama with a little bit of comedy too. It has comedy. Yeah. I guess we should talk about the plot. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you probably should before listening to this.
Yeah, you should. You should go into it without spoilers and see what you get out of it versus what other people get out of it, because I think you will be getting entirely different things.
Yeah, I think so too. The movie is about two teenagers, and we see one of them kind of grow up, and that is the main character, Owen. And he is very babied. Like we see at first that his parents are very protective, and then when he gets older, he still has a bedtime, even though he's like, I don't know, I want to say like in 9th grade or so.
Yeah.
And he meets this girl at the school that he's just sort of interested in, and she is into this supernatural TV show that's basically like a Buffy or an X-Files. Like it's a fake show. What's it called? The Pink...
Opaque.
The Pink Opaque, yeah. And they sort of bond over this supernatural TV show. But this girl who's clearly coming from like a bad household, I don't think we ever see her parents.
No. We hear them fighting, but we don't see them.
Yeah, and she alludes to like being beaten by her dad and stuff. So she asks him to run away with her, and his character is not quite like ready for that, even though they both sort of bond around this TV show, also over the general idea that they like don't belong, and they feel like aliens in the world. They do a very good job with that. And so she disappears for like, I don't know, like 8 years, and the show is canceled. And when she comes back,
I think a really important point is when he goes to the mom of the kids whose house he's pretending to be at because his parents are overprotective.
Right.
And begs her not to let him go with her because he wants to. And that scene is so painful in a lot of ways.
It is, because his mom has cancer, and like there's this idea of like he can't. He's very tied to his loved ones, his family, his world.
But even if, he's very grounded in reality, even when he's not.
He's scared.
He's very scared. He's very in self-denial. He deflects any personal question.
Mm-hmm. And then he basically grows up. He gets a boring job. He's working in a movie theater. And Maddie suddenly comes back and basically says to him, like, remember that show we watched as kids? Are you sure that's all it was? And so the plot of The Pink Opaque is it's two girls who met at summer camp. They're telepathically linked, And it's like, again, cheesy Buffy. They solve monsters of the week using their telepathy. And the show apparently, when it got canceled right when Maddie left,
Yes.
it ended with them both being buried alive and brought into the nightmare realm where they are slowly dying. And basically what Maddie slowly reveals is, I think we're them.
Yeah.
I think we're the two girls in that show, and we are in the nightmare realm right now. And it's such a good weird premise, because it becomes like at first like a psychological idea. It's like, has she lost her mind or what?
But even before that, we see kind of some of Owen's moments of fantasy, brief moments where he is one of those girls.
Yes, they do this thing where like when they show the show, it's often in like the 4:3 format, look TV grain, but every now and then it comes out of that.
Yeah. And every now and then they'll show a shot of him just walking and it'll turn into one of the characters.
Yeah, and there's other little things. The high school is called Void High, which they never call attention to. Like, there's little things about this world that feels off. And so it starts ambiguously, and then she tells him, like, in order to escape this, I paid someone to bury me alive. Yeah. And I left the nightmare realm, and I'm back here to get you. And so we have to bury you alive. And so there's this psychological aspect of like, well, no one wants to be buried alive. And so he ultimately, she brings him to the football field, and he runs off. It's kind of play for comedy, which is like what she's proposing is obviously like so intense. Yeah. And so he just kind of shoves her down and runs, and it's like this wide.
And you can tell it's hitting him in a way that feels real to him, like more real to him than reality.
Yes.
Which really, I don't think you can describe the plot of this film. I know. Think a person
that's
can
why
describe.
I'm doing like the bare bones before we get into it.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, because then what happens is they just skip 20 years.
Yeah.
And Maddie mentions like while she was in the nightmare realm, time would go by so fast, and she felt like something wasn't right. And so they skip him ahead, and it's the same actor playing it, and I think that's intentional.
I think it was when she was in the real world, time would go by too fast. And then they skip ahead, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the opposite.
No, I think no, you're right. I think the nightmare realm is the real world. I think you're right. Never mind.
Yeah, the world that we're in, she says,
you're right.
Before she buries herself alive.
You're right.
And he's just like, he's now old. He says to us that he had a family since then. He loves them. He's just working this job at this arcade, and he's like, he's wheezing, and he's older because he has asthma as well. And then I believe this is just more or less what happens. He goes into the bathroom and he vomits up this blue milk that is implied of like that was the nightmare realm milk she told him about. And he's able to open up his chest and he sees this beautiful light inside. This is after freaking out at his job in front of everybody. I'm skipping a lot because there was a lot of him talking about how there's this feeling of something in his chest that he just wants to scoop out. It's hard to describe this movie because it's kind of Lynchian in a very good way.
Yeah, it's Lynchian with more of an emotional core. It's very raw.
Yeah, we should probably get into it because it's right away the reviews pointing out, because this might all sound very weird, but as a lot of the reviews pointed out, this is very much a trans allegory, is one of the layers to it. Yeah. The idea that this kid, like some of the first things is like he's in the car and he's talking about the show, and his dad, Fred Durst, says, "Isn't that a girl's show?"
That's his only line. And that's all he says. Yeah.
That's his only line, yeah.
In the whole film, and it's delivered so menacingly, and there are shots of him later that are just like, even though Owen's household is not the household with any abuse going on, you feel unsafe.
Yes.
it as a viewer, you feel unsafe for him. It feels
Yes.
so unwelcome. Like there's an unspoken, like there's unspoken transness that just they will not, that will not be accepted even by Owen.
Yeah, it's so well done with that shit. Because most of the time when Owen, who I don't even know if Owen, I guess is depending on the allegory, would
Yeah.
Owen be a they? What are the pronouns there? Because the idea is
because
that,
the allegory is a TV show character.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
So it's like, I guess she, but it also a very specific she that is a fantasy that just resonated because Owen is young and needed something to cling to desperately that wasn't the life he had.
Yeah, and Owen, like very early on, Maddie says, "I'm into girls."
Yeah.
That's part of the comedy
And
stuff, by the way. Is
and he
they're
deflects
so
it
funny
by
as
saying,
high schoolers.
Yeah, and she asks him like, well, okay, what are you into? He deflects it by saying, I think I just like TV shows. Like he's just master at denying anything.
But I also kind of get that feeling, which
Yeah.
is like being like with your sexuality, not really being interested in it at a young age necessarily, or just finding that an exhausting question in general.
Yes, yeah.
And so like I really liked that where you don't quite know, and I think neither does Owen, right?
Right. No, it's Owen is not safe enough to explore that.
Yeah. And they get into a lot of like funny teenage shit here.
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah,
where he's
no,
like,
there's
"What
a-
happened to your friend?" And she's like, "Oh, she became a cheerleader," and it like felt almost Napoleon Dynamite-ish,
Yeah.
the way they were talking because they are still like dumb teenagers.
Yeah,
you know?
and they are dumb teenagers in the 2000s, and it's very evident by the way they talk.
Yeah. Everything's very over dramatic. The
Yeah.
show, Maddie loves this show like too much,
Yeah.
But of course, the idea is like, well, what if the reason she loves this show is because she's in the show? This is the nightmare realm. That's like the in universe story, right? Obviously, there's more symbolism to it. And so, like, what we're faced with is a story of one person who is seemingly, at least this is what I took from it. And tell me if this is what you got from it. And this is where it becomes more of a horror film to me, because like this affected me like a horror film. It does have horror elements for the record, and it does have some images that are going to stick with me, but a lot of those images are more of emotional beats. The idea is Maddie is seemingly freed. The act of burying yourself alive is so terrifying, right? And so I feel like the allegory there is like, in order to find the truth of who you are, you have to do something terrifying.
Yeah, you have to kill off any notion of what this world has put on you.
Yeah, and like it would mean facing his family, at first his mom and dad, and then later like the world that we have gripped onto. And having to reject it, right? And put it all on the line. And Maddie does that. And then at the end, the ending sequence that I found so heartbreaking,
Yeah.
he freaks out at the birthday party. He opens up his chest, seemingly confirming he is trapped in this nightmare realm. Something is wrong. And the last shot of the film is him walking through the arcade, gasping for air, kind of sobbing, and just apologizing to everyone for his outburst, being like, "I'm so
Too
sorry."
quietly,
sorry.
and they're not paying attention.
Yeah, no one's
Yeah.
paying attention. And that's it. The film fucking ends. And that image of that actor,
Yeah.
like with so much pain, having
think
to just apologize for existing, it was like, that's a fucking horror movie to me. That's horrifying.
Yeah, no, that scene hits you like a brick.
It does, and it sticks with me. No different than like, I don't know, the shower scene in the Shining, or like, or the twins, or like any jump scare in any horror movie. It resonates for me just as much.
Yeah.
Would that be your interpretation, by the way, of this movie? I don't want to do all the talking.
Would what be?
Just like that idea that Maddie has done the terrifying thing and is seemingly free while he is tied to this world.
That's one of them. Yeah, I think. Yeah, and the idea that she's not tied to her family anymore. Like she goes back to this friend she remembers from high school, and they both grab onto each other as if they're the only person alive because they're the only people who've had this experience. And Owen denies it for the sake of people who are objectively petrifying to...
Yeah.
And I think Fred Durst also played the villain in the TV show, I think. I'm not 100% on that.
Wait. Oh, that he's the moon man or whatever?
Yeah, Mr. Melancholy.
Mr. Melancholy, yes. Yeah, so in the TV show, so it looks like there is someone else credited for Mr. Melancholy.
So then Fred Durst just happens to look like...
I think that's no accident, though.
No, I don't think so, either.
That's when they're like the more like obvious horror elements come out, which is that when they talk about the TV show, they're at first it's a lot of his memory of the TV show, and so it's like there's a good bit where when he gets older, he watches it again on streaming, and he's like the show was kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't as good as I remember. So a lot of it we're seeing like the memory where it's like, ooh, the ice cream man villain is like this cool, grotesque thing. And then you actually see it and you're like, oh, it's just a dude in a costume. But Mr. Melancholy is the face on the moon. They do a cover of Smashing Pumpkins Tonight. So for reference, it's that. The famous movie, of course, as well, the silent film. So it's that image, and it's cheesy at first, and there's a sequence where it gets really menacing.
Yeah, the last episode that she sends him while she has run away, the final episode, feels like, oh, this is not a young adult show. I don't know what this is.
It bleeds into reality.
It does. It bleeds into reality very specifically to the point where the TV is like sucking Owen into it, and his dad's pulling him out.
Yeah, if you've seen the trailer, you'll know the shot, and so the Mr. Melancholy is like kind of this like almost like I don't want to say bad CGI. It's a use of
judicious use. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not supposed to look photorealistic, and that's what makes it terrifying.
Yeah,
it's a terrifying looking image.
Yeah,
which reminds me of World's Fair, because in World's Fair there's a couple shots where her face gets really like weird.
Yes.
And it's another image where you're like, fuck man, that's going to stick with me.
Yeah. Yeah. There are some shots that are just oddly lit, oddly distorted that
everything's really a little off.
Everything. And everything bleeds into itself. And they even talk about the way time goes by for them is different, which is very much what it is like when you have to retreat into pop culture, retreat into a fantasy world so much.
Yeah.
You lose things, everything kind of bleeds in, especially as a teenager. I don't know how to describe it.
It's hard to describe. This movie is hard to describe. It gave me a little bit of a lot of things. It gave me a lot of Lynch. It gave me a lot of rather touches of Lovecraftian, where it's about these intangible ideas, which I fucking love with horror movies. It gave me a little bit of John Dies at the end. It's comedy. It's also
that's so weird. I got completely different references.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, this director, this and World's Fair, they are hugely tapped into the concept of like internet nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like we didn't talk about the opening is the parachute. Everybody knows the parachute. If you were born in America at a certain time,
if you were a kid in the 90s,
you likely had a parachute day where they brought in the big parachute that everybody would do in gym class, and it includes that, and includes the planetarium.
Yep.
It taps into, that's why like this is a obviously a trans allegory, and it adds to it for it to be that, but it didn't feel inaccessible.
Yeah, it's also an allegory for just being chronically online, throwing yourself into pop culture in a way that you can only do if you need to escape reality. There are so many things that resonate
the pain
about
of nostalgia.
this. Yeah, and how nostalgia is predicated upon lies and personal experience. And I think different people's personal experience of this film are going to be very different.
That's what's wild about it. Like, the idea, like, just my own background, like, there's the part where he's sleeping over her house and he's sleeping next to the fish tank, right? And it's this weird, ominous vibe, this liminal space of this basement fish tank and this bubbling, and it's like dark, but there's this weird light. And I think in the wood paneling, and I've had so many memories like that, specifically, especially in high school. Like, I glommed on to someone who reminded me of Maddie, frankly. And like, I was in that friend circle of the kids who didn't quite feel like they fit in, and having these like weird little sleepovers and not really knowing like what I felt yet, and having that like obsession with a TV show. Obviously, I do several podcasts devoted to that. It all like, it just hits this specific nostalgia of feeling like you don't belong. I think, I want to watch it again. I feel like the world gets more menacing as it goes too.
Yeah.
Like those first scenes, the parachute.
And Stranger.
Yeah, the voting day that they do, that all feels like regular world. And then like,
except for it being void high, it's pretty normal. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just starts feeling weirder as it goes, I want to say. But I don't know for sure.
It feels weirder and weirder, and Owen fights it less and less. The more the world gaslights him, the less he fights it.
Oh, you mean fights the world, the nightmare zone? Yeah.
The less he fights the world he's in versus the less he will bury himself alive, basically.
Right.
Like, the less he resists it.
That's why I think like it's so we were talking about this on the ride home. There are two like main trans allegories, and I don't mean like trans movies, but allegories. And it is in my head, this and The Matrix, and they are both movies about how the real world isn't the real world.
I mean, I'd say there are others, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
those are
just,
and The Matrix isn't even explicitly a trans allegory. It's just made by
two trans
creators.
Directors,
two trans directors, and this film is in a lot of ways The Matrix. And
well, that's what I wanted to point out. What you just said too, which is that nobody sees The Matrix like necessarily as a trans allegory, right? That was a movie that was made, and then red pilling very famously took a dark turn. So I think this has that same feeling, which is that if you take away that allegory, it's still about someone who, as a teenager and a child, the world was like magical. There was this potential. There was this kind of wonder, and they have to, over the years, they have more and more responsibilities, right? He has a family.
It's very millennial, but also kind of eternal. Because we were gaslit by the economy for real, but all the hopes and dreams were pulled out specifically from under us. But versus Gen Z, who didn't even grow up having those promises.
For the record, he has a house because he inherits it, which was a good detail.
Yeah, it's because his dad dies, and he chooses to stay in that house.
Yeah. That terrifying house, and now it is his house, and it sort of resonates with the idea of growing up in nostalgia, right? Which is like they show kind of around him, like, you know, he works at like a kids zone type place, an arcade. But it's clearly like these crumbling spaces that we don't really have anymore. That was more in World's Fair, where like the opening sequences were a lot of like, oh, here's an abandoned toy store. Here are all these places. but you see that here where it's like, as he gets older, like he watches the show again and he's like, honestly, I was a little embarrassed. The show wasn't as good. It was cheap. It was silly. And then at his job, he just screams. He just can't handle it. And then he just like recovers and apologizes. And so like you can interpret that as like, you know, just the fucking frustrations of growing up, you know, of having like all these responsibilities and you're tied to this place and you can't just fucking run away anymore.
And in that way it is eternal. Like you can say that like the references are very generationally stuck, but there's nostalgia is always predicated upon personal experience and the lies that we tell ourselves through broken memories.
Yeah. So it is timeless to some extent. Obviously, it's the references like VHS tapes and stuff. I guess if you made this 20 years from now, it'd be like YouTube.
The musical references were very specific to very niche communities that
for sure
I really loved. But
I love those live bands. They were both fucking fantastic. There's a bar scene, and actually, I'm glad we brought this up because it ties into the other thing I want to talk about, which is we're all going to the World's Fair as a found footage film, probably because the director they probably couldn't afford otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that she was well budgeted for that. Even this film has a very tight budget. It's just made use of so fucking well.
Yes. And this also has a tight budget for sure. It's like limited locations, really great use of it, but as a director, they made so many fucking choices that I loved. Like, for example, there is narration in this. What's wild is that the narration I don't believe shows up right away. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does it start with narration?
I don't think so. I may have to check that.
Even if it starts with it or not, what happens is that the character of Owen, I feel like, I want to say like 20 minutes into the movie, turns and looks directly at the camera and starts talking to the camera, something that most films would do very early to establish.
You would start with that.
Yeah, and I remember going like, whoa, oh, it's okay, it's this, and then that's used sparingly and throughout, and not in a way where it felt like it relied on it.
Yeah, and it's never like a nudge, wink, this is a movie type thing. It's very raw and earnest.
Yeah, the way he speaks to us is like a diary, you know. It's very kind of sad, and it happens at choice moments, usually around transitions, and that was just like one of those weird choices where it kind of broke kind of the natural writing rules. And there's a lot of that in this, I'd say, where like the pacing isn't what you'd think. It doesn't hit like the 3-act structure exactly in a way you'd imagine.
It's very quick and very slow at the same time, which is they kind of talk about that. That is what it feels like when you don't fit into the world so intensely, you have to retreat into fantasy. Time doesn't go the same way.
Right. And it's the same with this movie, for sure. And then little choices like when there's some good, I call it plot efficiency, where like Maddie starts recording, so he doesn't get to watch the show at home because he has a curfew. So Maddie leaves him tapes,
a bedtime,
and they do a good oneer where it's Owen walking through the high school while on the screen we get these like the squiggles of the notes that Maddie's leaving that really like establishes like the obsession and the relationship, and they're all squiggles, like without saying it, they're all squiggles that, you know, like these are the notes that have been left with each tape. Little things like that, and it's like, I want to say like a couple minutes, that oneer. So it just, like this movie, like you said, it's slow and fast where it'll just sort of stop and let you kind of take a breath or take in the environment. Like,
but there's so much to take in at the same time. I feel like you do and don't have enough time. You just end up, it's like, this film is like a Rorschach test. You focus on what resonates with you. And whether or not that's psychologically valid, I don't know. But you only take what you see.
Yeah, that you're really right about that, because we watched this in an audience filled with people, and that made me so happy. Young people.
Yes.
It reminded me of when I saw like Oppenheimer, and it was just packed with like 20-year-olds who are like, "Woo!" It was like Marvel, and it was like, this is so great that this like indie film is getting this. And I remember when it ended, there was like kind of a hush on the audience, and people like, they didn't hate it, they were like kind of murmuring about it because it's so unusual. It doesn't end.
There was like a cathartic laugh that kind of rippled through the audience too.
Yes.
It was.
People were like, well, that was a fucking trip.
Yeah.
And I heard people discussing it, and people were like, some people were confused. In my head, I was like, what's there to be confused about? But that's what's kind of delightful. Like you saying, it's a Rorschach test where like, maybe what I saw isn't, I felt like, oh, I know exactly what this movie's about.
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong,
I felt like there were a lot of references to, and I will not remember the name. There was, and this is just me and my weird obsessions, there was an Elliot Page film that came out, I don't know when. It was only released in Canada. I found it on YouTube and obsessed over it, and it was non-linear, and it was so, I do not even know the name of it.
Really?
Someone please help me.
I'll try right now while you keep going. Because what's the reference?
Oh God, just some of the imagery, some of the, I don't even know. I just remember watching it obsessively as a teenager, to be honest. I could be completely projecting. Some of the transitional shots, some of the intensity of the actors, and I don't know. I mean, the director could not have even seen this film. There could be parallel. There could have been films. There were definitely films we're not thinking of that she did see. Like there are references abound. I don't think we'll ever get them all.
Was it the TV movie Ghost Cat?
No.
Okay. And now I want to watch. This is Elliot Page, 2004 Ghost Cat. Originally titled Mrs. Ashborough's Cat. I'm going to watch this. I'm going to watch this movie. I assume it's about a ghost cat, right?
I would think so.
It'd be weird if it wasn't about a ghost cat.
It would be.
It has a picture of a cat on the front. Sorry, I'm so sorry. It looks. Sorry, it's labeled as mystery. I want is it going to be who killed the cat? Because that would be great. Fuck, I'm going to watch Ghost Cat. Shit. Oh, sorry. We were talking about the music, and what I just wanted to say, like that scene, they just let us watch.
Yes, the performers. They just and they're
that's
shot.
Something movies don't tend to do.
Yeah, and they're so intense, and they're shot in such an intense way.
They're shot like this is all our whole world. They're shot in a way where it's like we're watching these people now, and we're going to see how cool they are. And I think what that plays into is the nostalgia of it all, which is that I think when you said what pinged me, you said it's slow, but it's also fast. I really think that's the point, which is like these beautiful little moments that we think about, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And suddenly years pass. And that's sort of the idea, is this movie like it does a shocking where it's like 8 years later and you're like, oh shit. You know, that's the point, is to kind of rattle you.
Yeah, I think when you have to be so detached, those rare moments when you can feel safe in the present, or feel yourself in the present, or even you're just shocked into being present, are so resonant and are so slow, and then all of a sudden they're over. It's strange. I don't. Yeah.
I mean, I
don't know. Can you tell this rattled me in a good way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any. I mean, Mr. Melancholy, you know.
Yeah.
Like that is the villain of this is, you know, I mean, melancholy specifically defined is like sadness without a specific reason, right? It's just this general feeling. And that's what I'd say World's Fair is also about, and what this is about. That ties deeply into the nostalgia, because nostalgia is a pain. It was originally treated as a disorder, as a disease, even when the term was first coined, because nostalgia can be great, but it's usually bittersweet, right?
Yeah.
It's it can be silly at times. Me and Tom covered a movie called My Winnipeg, which is a documentary about Winnipeg. And it's both, it's very like artistic and very sad, because the idea is it's about this guy and he's sort of getting so angry about like dumb things that like dumb buildings that got demolished in Winnipeg, and he's like furious about it. And it's that idea of like nostalgia makes everybody kind of silly, because we're pining for these dumb things that were commercialized then, you know, we get sad about like Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. And
but
what
it's
we're
very
really,
real too.
Yeah. And what we're really pining for is this idea of the world is magical, all the paths are open, the doors are open. It's not too late. There's a series of chalk drawings on the ground that we see, and the last one says it's not too late.
Yeah.
And yeah, that feeling is what we're actually pining for.
Because it isn't too late. That's the thing. That's the reality.
Yeah.
And since this is a horror movie, it's sort of showing, I mean, we don't know. Owen maybe will make a change after this, but we don't see it.
No.
What we see is someone who's clearly feels that they took the wrong path, but there's like nothing. They feel like they can't do anything about it.
Feels it so intensely, he's literally suffocating. Like, as much as the suffocation of being buried alive is scary to him at the time, it's more suffocating to be in the world and not be, I guess, herself.
Yeah. That's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the premise of The Pink Opaque is that the two heroes are buried alive. And there are moments late in the movie where, because Owen has asthma, you realize it's sounds of suffocation that Owens is making. And you realize that it's representing a lot of things, but one being that if they are in fact this character, they are slowly dying is the idea, because they are in fact suffocating.
Yeah.
It really works into the horror of it all, where it's like there's just really good visuals of the idea of this weird show bleeding into reality, this Lynchian aspect. I mean, we mentioned at the end, Owen goes into the bathroom and they use a box cutter and slice their chest open, and then expose this light inside. And
it's like TV static too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, you can take it all literally or figuratively. That's why it feels very Lynchian to me. Or Cronenbergian, I want to say too. But like the fact that I can't pin this makes me very happy about this director, you know?
Yes.
They are very fucking fresh right now. Like this is, I can't fucking wait for the next thing they make.
Me neither. Oh my God.
Unbelievably talented.
Injected into my veins.
Yes. Yeah, like the blue goo that they're made to drink in this. I want it inside of me.
It's very Bizarro World Nickelodeon.
Yeah. God damn, they're so good at this. Like both of these movies, they're so good at tapping into that melancholy feeling that comes with nostalgia and like being young and not feeling like you belong. These movies fucking nail that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have much else to say about it.
I don't know. There are so many different things that really hit you about this, and I feel like we're going to keep discovering new ones. I don't know.
This show, the reason it's called We Just Watched, the premise of this show people are listening to, is it's literally first reactions. Like me and Tom, we don't talk about the movie before the podcast. It's supposed to be about, two people talking about a podcast for the first time. And I only point that out because this is one of those movies that it's really hard to unpack in that context. It is, we just watched is purposefully so two people giving their imperfect view of a film that they just watched that they haven't had enough time to necessarily process or watch a second time. And so, I mean, I wouldn't feel
this film
bad
is
about
really
not quite knowing what to say about this quite yet, Sorry, what was that?
I mean, this film is really worth a second watch, and I feel like we would notice entirely new things. I mean, there are tiny little set pieces that you only see for a brief moment that you just go, wait, that was weird. Why did it say that? Why was that there? It just...
Yeah. What if, like Waldo, Fred Durst is actually in the background of every scene? I want that. Now I kind of want a Where's Fred Durst book. Does he have defining, like he has a beanie, I want to say?
Does he? I thought it was a backwards baseball cap back in the day.
Maybe. I'm not a Limp Bizkit person. I gotta tell you.
Me neither. I remember he said the word agreeance at an award show, and that's all I remember. That's it.
It's funny to say, I don't know anything about the guy, so I hope he's not like a terrible person or something, which is like that universal fucking disclaimer when saying stuff about anybody these days. But like, I am, funny enough, more of a fan of Fred Durst now than I was for Limp Bizkit, because I didn't care about Limp Bizkit at all.
I mean, I want to ask, did anyone? But I know they did. We just didn't talk to them. Mm-hmm. Very purposefully so, because they were as threatening as Fred Durst is in this film.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll show you his movie, The Fanatic, and I'll really get you on the Fred Durst train.
The way you described it to me, that sounds even harder to unpack, because it's like, does he have the mind of a child? What's going, like that Fred Durst, yes, specifically, because there's John Travolta playing a mentally handicapped person as well. But I'm saying Fred Durst, does he have the mind of a child? I don't know, based on your description of that film.
I think Fred Durst did a very good job directing The Fanatic. From what I remember, it's just one of those movies where it's like, I maybe a different script. I think maybe a different script.
Oh, did he not write it?
He co-wrote it.
Okay. Maybe direct someone else's stuff.
Yeah. Fred, I know you're listening. I really think you have potential as a director. And
actor, frankly.
The Fanatic was a hell of a swing. Let me just put it that way. And actor. Again, he doesn't... I was going to say he doesn't do much in this, but he does a lot, because...
He does a lot without doing very much. He's petrifying.
Like you said, the way the house is portrayed is just utterly terrifying. And like this kid, like when they're in their room, it feels like they're only like haven,
Yeah. And even there's one shot where even Owen's mom seems a little, you can't tell whether or not she's uncomfortable with the space or uncomfortable with him in the space. If she's feeling for him or if she's feeling for herself.
Yeah. Why do you think they never show when Owen grows up? He just says, I have a family of my own, but we never see the family.
Yeah. I
don't know what...
I think that when Owen says, I love them very much, it's a very earnest moment. But I also think that the family is kind of window dressing in the same sense that the real world, the nightmare realm, is window dressing.
Right.
I don't think that they don't know Owen, and therefore they are not really... It doesn't really matter if they're there or not.
I think so too. It's hard because this is one of those... this is one of those movies where it's made with such intent that I feel like I'm almost going to accidentally put a lot of symbolism behind something that, like, maybe the reason why is because they didn't want to cast anybody. It would cost too much money, and they were like, yeah, we don't need to see the family. But I sort of agree with you on that. Where I mean, at that point, the world is supposed to feel, I feel like, the most dreamy at that point. We only really see Owen at work, and everything's a little weird. Great use of Conor O'Malley for that reason, by the way, because he plays a bully. He's a bully, but he's also like Owen's supervisor, and he is very like, I think you should leave slash Detroiters energy, where it's like he's funny, but he's a lot. He sings the happy birthday song, and then he's like, and let's do it again. Sings it a second time. Shit like that.
And if you were ever a kid at a themed party, that was the most terrifying thing you could hear.
Yeah. like he's terrifying. Like he's terrifyingly committed to the job. Yeah. It's a great use of him. Great casting all around. Fuck.
Yeah. Oh my God. There are so many things about this that we will continue to notice, I think.
Yeah. I can't stress this. I feel like I might be repeating myself, but like it really, like, there's a lot of horror movies are a series of like jump scares or scary images, right? And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. This director, they've made 2 movies where when I leave it, I feel like I've watched a horror movie, even though upon memory I realize like there's not that many horror scenes.
Yes.
It is one big horror story.
Yes.
And that is...
World's Fair does this so well too, where the ending is so ambiguous, you can't leave it alone in your mind.
Yes. It works the way a horror movie should, where it gnaws at you, and there's images that you won't forget, but they aren't just of like a scary fucking clown face. Although in this case, one of them is a scary fucking face.
But even then,
but it's all of that.
It's a distortion. Everything scary about this movie is because it's so exaggerated and somehow off.
Yes. And I think all of that is so tied to the lead performances too.
Yes.
Owen and Maddie, I think none of this would have been as effective if those 2 actors and the director directing them like didn't really like tap into like they're so scared of this world, and they're so out of this world, and everything feels so threatening.
The
works
way
so well.
You experience Maddie when she comes back, you really don't know, did she have a psychotic break? Is she on drugs? Or did she really have an experience that is so unbelievable? She now feels completely detached from everything around her.
Yeah.
You can't, and I don't think you're meant to distinguish those things.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, yeah, that the basic premise of like, I love premises like this because, like, you know, like there's an X-Files episode where they're trapped in, they get engulfed by mushroom spores, right? And they live out a dumb fantasy where Mulder finds an alien. And I always think of shows like that and go like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if you did a whole movie from the perspective of that fantasy, right? Like, or like little ideas like that of like, what's a weird way you can tell a new story? And this is that, right? Which is like, we all know plots like this. These 2 girls trapped in the nightmare realm where nothing's the same. And the premise here is like, what if that is true? What if we're watching those 2 girls and we start in the nightmare realm? It's taking something that it's taking a story that you might have seen
in a completely different format.
Yes,
we would have started with the 2 girls, not on the TV, just living their lives, and then gone to Owen and Maddie.
Something so simple as just telling that story from a different starting point and leaving it ambiguous just makes all the difference in this like really, really cool and original way.
Yeah, and I think it's very true of the world at the time, and even now, if you are born with differences, the world gaslights you into so many different things, into denial mostly. And
Yeah.
if you're born trans, like it's gotta feel like, or even just like not gender conforming in some way, it really does feel like the whole world is gaslighting you. The whole
Yeah.
world is, and you do wonder, am I crazy? Like, am I wrong in some way? Because everything is set up to make you believe you are somehow wrong just by being there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's science that backs up this idea, and we're learning it more and more, that gender is, of course, it is so much on a spectrum. And like, it's just funny how we built a society that is so black and white. And I
Yeah.
remember growing up feeling,
And it's not even historically, it does not even go back as far as we think it does.
oh yeah, oh absolutely not, yeah. With the you mean the we've
You
always
get the
changed
feeling
what
that
it meant.
this is how it always was. And fuck no.
Yeah, we've
A
always
lot of ancient
changed.
cultures recognized people who didn't, like there were third genders and two-spirit people and like all sorts of,
Yeah.
it's
It's just interesting because I think this affects a lot more people. That weird false dichotomy, that black and
Yeah.
white.
Well, it
where
affects
it's like you're
everyone in some way,
expected-
to
Yeah,
some
I
extent.
think so.
So I think in that sense, the trans allegory is obvious and yet not, because you can take something out of it that is specific to your experience that might not be that.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not trans, but I always felt that idea of like, you got to play football, you got to do these boy
Yeah.
things, and I never really wanted to. I hung out with girls a lot.
No one is going to fit into the binary 100%. It's not possible. They're too narrow.
I mean, I'm sure some people do, but like, yeah. And so like this movie, I think resonates with anybody who has that feeling where it's like, growing up, you were expected to be a certain way, to do a certain thing. School is all about adults telling you, now it's time to do this. Now
Yeah.
it's all right. It's 1:00. You just ate. Go run in this field. And get sweaty, and then you don't get to shower, and then continue your day. It's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck are you
Yeah.
asking me to do? Are you kidding me?
The shit that we make kids do, we would never put on ourselves.
Yeah.
You would never make an adult run laps. That's fucked
And,
up. That's wrong. That's
yeah.
torture.
That's torture. There's certain things that have gone away. Like there was the classic, I think it was more in the 50s, like the expectation to shower at school.
I
like
think
gym
that
class
still
and stuff.
existed in a lot of schools that we
depends
just
on the
happened to
school.
not go to, because you went to a performing arts school and I went to
Yes.
the LA equivalent of that.
You're right though, because I went to one of the reasons I went to that is the first school I went to, the one that's like in my district and stuff, was a jock high school, like a football school, where you're right, they expected you to shower, and it's like it doesn't really, sexuality doesn't even play into that.
No,
That's
it's just
like,
why would you do that to people?
yeah, why would you make that? You know where that happens? Schools and fucking
prison.
prison. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
and
so, like-
clearly, if you don't fit into the gender that you're shoved into, it's gonna be unbelievably surreal and awful in ways that. But it's awful for everybody. There's no.
Yeah. But we're expected to endure it, right? We're being
Yeah.
told like, "Oh yeah, it sucks."
There's even a
but
sign
you
on
gotta
the.
endure it.
What did that sign on the wall of Void High
Pain
School
is
say?
weakness leaving the body.
Yes.
It's a perfect. I forgot. Thank you for pointing that out, because that's how they're portraying the high school. They're
Yeah.
doing it's a sports school. There's the football stadium. It reminded me a lot of. I mean, honestly, the high school he goes to in this has a dark room. Mine did not. So like, this is a better high school. But I'm talking about the school I went to before, the performance arts school. Obviously, the performance arts school I went to had a dark room, but which again was more nostalgia. The dark room,
Yeah.
high school dark room. Everybody fucked in the dark
Yeah.
room. But
And it also does feel like, and maybe this is wrong, maybe this is not true, and I know that social media adds a whole new layer of this that we did not have to the same extent with MySpace or whatever. But it also feels like the 90s and early 2000s were very, very much about enforcing norms. Pop culture was very much about there was, especially with children, there were weird obsessions with what does it mean to be normal and what happens if your kid isn't normal. I don't know. Maybe this is just me.
Oh, I think that's always been happening, right? To some extent.
It has always been happening to some extent. I feel like and maybe it's always worse in the past, but we do step back in certain ways, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It goes back and forth.
It goes back and forth, but the trend is generally, the longer trend is progressive. Mm-hmm. Even though we have moments of terrible, horrifying.
I think we're getting there. I shouldn't put it that way, but I do think in the end,
you can't.
On the long term, we get better with this stuff for the most part. You
just can't deny what people fundamentally feel to be true, and I think that's what this is. I mean, Owen is suffocating. Yes,
very much so, and it's horrifying. But, man, is there any more to say about this?
I feel like we could talk forever and not say anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, it invokes other conversations, as people can probably tell, and other memories and stuff. So I guess I want to say, is there anything final that you would want to say and get out about this movie that we didn't say?
Just watch it. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, just watch it. I really can't stress enough how much I love the performances and the directing in this. Justice Smith, he did such a good job in this character. It looks like, I was looking at him up, he's doing this great thing. He's doing two it looks like indie dramas, and then Now You See Me 3. And I'm like, yeah, man, live that dream. Just keep doing big Hollywood films, and then do the little things that are cool. The director, fucking let's go with Jane Schumacher. I'm so sorry. I hope they get more and more money dumped on them.
I will follow the rest of her career for as long as I can.
Yeah.
I'm devoted now. I'm in it.
So, yeah, this was same weekend as Fall Guys, and I'm just feeling so fucking good about movies again. We were in such a slump, and now it's man, a weekend with multiple really good movies of the whole spectrum, like a big Hollywood action film and then an indie horror, both fucking killing it. Both movies that shined in ways that I hadn't seen before. I don't know, man. It's great out there. I hope people are able to see this. If it's not playing in your area, then, it'll be on streaming soon enough, honestly.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I guess watch We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Yes. And check that out. Like I said, these aren't conventional horrors, and that's, to me, what makes them great horror, personally.
Yeah, I feel like that World's Fair must have been a sleeper hit, because it would be so difficult to get this film made, and it must have been much bigger than we thought it was when we watched it on streaming.
Yeah, I mean, I want to look up the budget of this, but I probably won't find anything substantial. Because, I'm sure this wasn't... Yeah, there's no budget.
It was definitely
yet.
higher.
Yeah, I mean, this is A24.
It was definitely higher. Yeah.
Yeah, A24 has been killing it with this shit. And it's got to be a high budget, but it's not exactly there's that many expenses here.
Yeah, it's not a major blockbuster.
Yeah, it felt like it was. I don't even know if they had to build really sets for it. It felt like there's a lot of sort of there and back again, where we get the football field, and then we clearly that was shot in a day or a couple days maybe. It feels like they shot the day stuff and then they shot the night stuff. There's a lot of okay, we're gonna reuse these locations. A lot of it's the woods, it's the middle of a road, cheap locations. I thought,
but very effective, and the way it makes you really notice the way little things are off because they are the same locations.
Oh, shit. You know who produced this?
Who?
Emma Stone.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that in the credits. I was like,
Actually, good for her. So yeah, I think it is what I think it's. There's probably some buzz, but it also probably like World's Fair just was seen by the right people. It might have just been that.
Well, fuck yeah. I mean, I'm so glad.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait for more. Cool, Hana. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Honestly, thank you for bringing me because I hate leaving the house, and I'm so glad I saw this.
Yeah, I'm glad I brought you to it. And I didn't even realize we had watched World's Fair together, so I just like that we're on this groove with this. Do you want to, at the end of this, plug your shit again?
Sure. The way you said that, sorry.
Plug that shit in there.
My socials are, again, for everything, Hana Michels, HANAMICHELS. I'm pretty sure I'm that on everything.
Right.
And yeah, I'm working on stuff that might never be released. It might be released tomorrow. Who knows?
Same. I guess I'm going to plug The Fanatic, directed by Fred Durst. I'm going to plug our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefully unemployed, GAMEFULLY, unemployed. We do custom We Just Watched episodes, where people get to, like, there's a tier where you can have us cover a movie, just any movie that you feel like, not a new movie, but for just $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of podcasts. Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. Those are all, about niche things, as you can tell. You get all those for $5 a month. It's like something like it's like 8 podcasts a month for $5. For a little more, you can watch movies with us every Friday night. If you go to gamefullyunemployed.com, you can get our t-shirt store, our merch store. We have a lot of like cool X-Files and Batman merch, stuff that you don't necessarily have to be like a fan of us. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's some brand stuff, but there's also just like fun shirts that you can impress all your friends with. All your friends. You can be the belle of the ball. You can be cool.
I actually have impressed friends with your shirts.
Yes.
I genuinely have.
See? It makes you cooler. You're like the Fonz.
There are some really funny ones. I'm not going to... Yeah. There actually are.
Yeah, they're good. It's good t-shirts. Good t-shirts for good people. You're a good person if you wear our t-shirts. And you'll be blessed by Jesus. Hey, listen, our music is produced by Chris Corlew. You can find him on twitter.com as the Corlew, or go to shipwreckedsailor.bandcamp.com. Our channel artwork is produced by Michael Vincent Bramley. For more of his work, go to mvbramley.art. Our episode artwork is by Justin Brown, available on Twitter as Justin T. Brown or at artnessbyjustinbrown.com. And finally, additional artwork is by Starlene Hodge. You can find her work at starlenearts.com or on Twitter as StarleneX. Cool. Goodbye.